Today, we're going to look at the multi-track recording functions of the Rodecaster Pro. This is a little bit more advanced tutorial for people that want to have a little bit more flexibility in their podcast post-production. So let's look at the first method, which is multi-track recording on the Rodecaster Pro. To enable multi-track recording to the internal SD card, let's jump into the menu using the gear icon. From here, we're going to go to Hardware, and then we'll go to Advanced and Multi-Track. In here, you'll see there's an option for micro SD card. Make sure that this is toggled on. And for the future step of recording to the computer, we're also going to make sure that multi-track is turned on for the USB connection as well. To make sure we're getting a raw signal for us to use in post-production, we're going to turn on the bypass audio processing option. This will prevent the processing from being applied to the audio files. That way you have maximum flexibility in post. We'll go ahead and turn up our other mics. We'll hit record. And this podcast will be recorded as a multi-track session. So each individual input is getting its own WAV file. Now, right now, I have mic 1 plugged into our H6, so all we're seeing on here is mics 2, 3, and 4. You'll also get tracks for USB, the auxiliary input, and Bluetooth, as well as your sound banks. So let's go ahead and stop recording. And now, if we want to pull this up on our computer, we are going to use the Rode Companion app. We have already installed this. It's a pretty simple process. And once it's installed, you can open it up and you'll get this window that actually shows your sound banks. So for what we want to do, the podcast transfer mode has to be enabled on the Rodecaster Pro before it's going to show up in this podcast menu. So once again, let's go to the gear icon. Then we'll go to Hardware. We'll go to micro SD card, and we're going to enable the podcast transfer mode. Make sure to click yes. You can see now all of our podcasts are showing up in the menu. So let's go with the most recent one. We're just going to go ahead and hit this button right here, transfer a podcast to your computer. So let's just create a new folder on the desktop. Make sure we have the new folder selected and save. Now it's going to transfer all those files to your computer. So from here, you're able to edit the individual tracks in the audio program of your choice. Today, we're going to use Adobe Audition. So once we're in Adobe Audition, we can go ahead and do File New, Multi-Track Session. Just to keep everything consistent, use a sample rate of 4800 Hertz, a bit depth of 24 bits, and make sure the master send is stereo. We'll go ahead and hit OK. The next thing we will do is over in this panel over here, you can double click. It'll bring up a menu, and we saved everything to the desktop. So we'll go ahead and go there. Now you can see all the different inputs here. We've got Bluetooth, mic 1, mic 2, mic 3, mic 4, sounds, which are the sound banks, stereo mix, which is basically a stereo mix down of your whole podcast, TRRS, which is the auxiliary input, and USB. But let's go ahead and just import the 4 mic tracks. So we'll just select all those, hit open, and you'll see they're in here now. So the easiest way to put these into your workspace is to select them all and drag them over here. And it will ask you if you want to add all selected files to the same track, or what we want, place each file onto its own track. So here we can see our various audio files for mic 1, mic 2, mic 3, and mic 4. And then we can go crazy with adding effects and trimming voices and bringing them up and down and doing all the things that you'd like to do in a DAW software. Now, I'm not going to get too in-depth into the actual audio editing process. In fact, I recommend you check out Clean Cut Audio by my friend Tom Kelly. He has an excellent series all about audio editing specifically for podcasts. It's a great series. Check him out. So the next thing we're going to do is look at how to use the Rodecaster Pro as an audio interface, a multi-track audio interface. Now, on the Rodecaster Pro, we want to make sure that we're done with the podcast transfer mode. So we can go ahead and leave that. We'll go back, go to Advanced, Multitrack, and make sure that the USB setting for Multitrack is turned on. Now we can go back to our computer. So let's go ahead and make a new Multitrack session. Go ahead and hit OK. We can go ahead and go to Preferences, Audio Hardware. And then there is the default input. What we want is the multi-channel. We can set the default output to the Rodecaster Pro stereo. And this basically means that we can monitor using our headphones. So once that all looks good, we will hit OK. Now on each track, there is a in and a out. The thing that we want to change is the input. So for the mic inputs, we're going to go ahead and choose mono. And for the mic I'm speaking into, which happens to be mic 1, we will select mic 1. Now you'll see nothing on the meters yet because you're going to need to enable ARM for recording. And now here we are, we're showing up in the DAW. You can see the meters bouncing here. So if we had more people in here and we wanted to record more tracks of audio, we could simply move to another track, go to input, mono, and we could do mic 2. We could go to the next track, mic 3, and then the next track, mic 4. Make sure that we arm them all for recording, and when we're ready to record, we can go ahead and hit the record button down here, and it will start recording. When we're done recording, we can simply hit stop on our DAW, and we'll see that our tracks are there. So the last thing I want to go over are some of the more advanced features that have actually just been unlocked by a beta firmware released by Rode. So let's go to their website and check it out. So again, we're going to go to firmware, and we can see there is the Rodecaster Pro beta version. We'll go ahead and click Mac. Once you download it, go ahead and unzip the file, and we'll see there's a new Rodecaster Pro app here. We'll go ahead and open it. And with the new beta, it will tell you that your firmware is out of date. Now, of course, right now we have the most recent stable release, but because we're installing this beta, we're going to see this. Let's go ahead and update. All right, so now we can see on our Rodecaster Pro that it says beta up in the corner. So let's go take a look at what the new stuff is in the beta release. So we'll go to Settings, we'll go to Hardware, we'll go to Advanced, and now we see Extras. So in Extras, we can enable Effects Edit Mode, and we can enable Console Meters Mode. Once those are enabled, we can go back home. So the really cool new feature is the Effects Editing Mode. So you used to be kind of limited to setting the type of voice and the volume of that person's voice, the strength of their voice, in order to have the processing compensate for different voices. Well, now we can actually edit individual parameters for all the different effects. We can go to our individual channels again by hitting the channel numbers here. And you'll notice that the voice option is now grayed out. And now we have effects in its own menu here. So let's go ahead and click on that. And we'll see all the different effects, including a brand new one called reverb. First of all, let's take a look at compressor. As you can see, we have the enable feature up at the top, but now we have all the individual compressor parameters that we can play around with, including threshold, ratio, attack, release, and makeup gain. You can go in here and you can change all the parameters to your liking. So obviously you have the compressor, you have the noise gate, which off the bat is a little bit aggressive out of the box. So It's definitely nice that we can now tone that down a bit. It's great now that we have access to edit the aural exciter because it tended to create a little bit of tinniness to people's voices. It sounded a little bit thin. And now we can kind of dial it back and just use it to add a little bit of presence to your voice without losing low end. And finally, we have a high pass filter. The new effect is reverb. Typically with most podcasts, they're pretty dry. There's usually almost no reverb. It's cool though that you can now control reverb and add it if you need to. So now we'll also notice that there's an overall compressor, which this is going to, I believe, apply to the stereo mix down of your podcast. Okay, so the last thing we're going to show you is a more advanced feature of the podcast transfer mode. We're going to go into our Rodecaster Pro menu, go to Hardware, Micro SD card, and turn on the podcast transfer mode. And now we can go back to our Rodecaster Pro companion app, and we'll go to podcasts. So now we have a couple new options for the podcast transfer mode. We can actually export directly to MP3. You can choose the bit rate, the sample rate, and now you can actually choose a loudness preset, including iTunes, Spotify, BBC. And when you're ready, you can click the button. Nothing else required to get this ready and up on to the podcast hosting sites. So really cool feature, just making things that much faster. All right, guys, that is going to do it for our series on the Rodecaster Pro. As we do in our other gear review videos, I will post links to all these products down in the description. If you use our links, we will get a small referral fee, which helps us keep this channel going. If you want to support this channel, go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell to get notified every time we put out a new piece of content. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Nick Taylor from Menajerie Studio, and we'll see you in the next video.